Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Watch while I paint up this custom sculpt I made from one of my favorite comics of all time. This is my paint up of World War Spawn. So now that I have this guy prepped and ready for paint, like all my models, I'm going to start with the skin tones first. So as you can tell, I ended up with two versions of his head. A version with his helmet and the more traditional hamburger head. Now in the comics he's only ever seen with his helmet on. However, in the process of sculpting the hamburger details, I quickly went down the rabbit hole and ended up sculpting his entire head. So now I have a variant head to work with, which works to my advantage since it'll be the head we focus on in the video. Now of course I'll need to repeat the process for the other head, but since we only see his lower face, it won't be as involved as the hamburger head. First up, I want to apply a base coat. For that I chose Vallejo Game Air's Barbarian Flesh. So I chose this color as opposed to the regular flesh because it just had a nice unnatural feel to it, which I thought suited this guy perfectly. Next I want to block in the exposed muscle with a terracotta red. Now for the shading on this guy's head, I'm using a beastly brown. And what I want to do is go around the head and apply the shading to areas like under the chin and eyebrows, as well as the jawline, ear holes, and any folds and pits in the skin. For the last bit of shading, I want to use a little hex lichen, which is a more purpley color. Now unfortunately I went a little heavy-handed with it, so off camera I went back with the original base coat and the beastly brown and dialed back the harshness of the purple, just to kind of help level it off some. You can see here the results of toning back the hex lichen on his face, and I'm much happier with how it looks. So now what I want to do is start focusing on the final details of his skin, and to do that I need to touch up the terracotta red on the exposed muscles first. One of my favorite techniques is dry brushing. It's a nice simple process and just makes those small details come to life. Here I mixed the barbarian flesh with some regular flesh and a little bit of white. I want to be a bit more methodical here rather than just going crazy over the entire head. I just want to focus on the areas of interest and avoid getting any on the freshly painted muscle. For the final step, I'm applying a detail wash to all the little wrinkles and pits and folds, and using a cotton swab or my finger to wipe away any excess and better blend it with the skin. For the wash, I'm just using what was left over from the dry brushing and added some of the hex lichen and then thinned it down with some water. So now that I've finished up the skin tones and sealed the head with a clear coat, it's time to start painting in the eyes and teeth. So first I'll block in the eyes with the Vallejo Model Colors Light Green. With the eyes blocked in, let's move on to blocking in the teeth with a golden brown. Okay, so now that I have the eyes and teeth blocked in, what I want to do is go in and add that glowing pupil that Spawn eyes are known for. To do that, I'm going to use this Escopenia green. Man, I hope I said that right. Otherwise, his eyes are just going to look kind of flat and lifeless with just a solid color green. So what I want to do first is wet the eye a little bit. I probably want to wet it a little bit more. And that's probably too much. So I'll just wick some away. Now that I have the eye wet, what I want to do now is just take a little bit of this lighter green and drop it in the middle here like so. And just let it run. Now it's going to run into the crevices of the eye. And what I want to do is dry off my brush and then come in here and kind of wick that lighter green away. Might want to put a little more green in his eye here. And this is a little bit of a process, you know. You want to go back and forth with it until you get the look you're going for. So I'm thinking I'm going to blend this edge a little with some water. Try and wick some of this away on his lower eye. Not sure how well you can see this on camera, but you can see here that there's just a little bit of a pupil. So I'm going to keep working this pupil until I'm happy, then repeat the process on the other side so I can move on to the teeth. So for the teeth, what I want to do is go back over the base color with an ivory white, and I'll most likely mix in some of the golden brown just so it's not quite so stark. There we go, the teeth are painted and looking gnarly. As a final touch, I'm going to apply Vallejo's Rust Texture Matte Wash. Now all I'll have to do this off camera is I'll need my magnifying glasses to see down in the cracks. Then I'll get the gums painted up and I'll be right back. Alright, so there you have it. The heads are done. And I gotta say, I'm pretty jazzed with how these turned out. While off camera, I went ahead and glossed the eyes, teeth, and exposed muscle. And I'm happy I did so. It just really completes the look and adds some nice contrast against the matte finish of his skin. Now I did skip ahead some and painted the helmet as well, just so I have a complete look for both heads. Again, I'm super happy with how these are looking, and I'm excited to be moving on. So let's start painting the body. For the base coat on the body, I chose a dark Panzer Gray. I didn't want to go with the pure black for his upper body because I wanted to be able to shade and highlight, not just highlight. Plus in the comic his symbiote comes off as more of a gray anyway, so it just felt more natural to go with this base color. I'm using a pure black here to shade the areas between his muscles as well as undercuts like his armpits and shoulder pads. To add even more depth to his upper body, I'm going back with a regular gray and adding in some highlights. For this step I want to focus on the high spots on the model. This will create the illusion of a light source as well as adding more dimension to his physique. Okay, so I've gone ahead and blocked in almost everything for the body. For the red parts of his costume, I went with a Vallejo Model Colors Dark Vermilion. Now for simplicity, we're going to focus on the backpack for this part of the video. So what I want to do first is take this simple red wash I mixed up. Now I didn't mix up enough, so I'll need to mix some more and brush it over the entire piece. So the wash is dry and sealed with a clear coat, so now it's time to dry brush the original base color onto the piece. Now unfortunately the dark vermilion won't cover like I want it to, so I'm first going to dry brush white in the areas I want to apply the red, and this will sort of act as a primer to help with the paint coverage. Now that I've finished up with the white, I can come back and dry brush the base color over those areas. Now I don't want to go too heavy at first. I want to gradually build up to the look I'm going for. I can always keep applying paint, but it's so much harder to remove it. And just to add a little oomph to the red, I dry brushed some orange in certain areas. And man, I'm happy I did. It just really makes that red pop. Okay, so the backpack is pretty much done, and like I said before, I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I'm really excited to get the other red parts painted up to match. I think it's going to look really cool once he's done. So I'll go ahead and seal it, paint the buckles with a Tamiya bronze, and I can finally move on to finishing up the body. Now the last area I need to paint on this dude's body are his pants. Now I've already blocked them in with a dark Russian green, and now I'm just shading them with a darker version of that base coat. The reason I saved the pants for last is that I needed an area that I could handle without worrying about rubbing the paint away. Sealing the paint with a clear coat definitely helps, but the more you handle the model, the more likely you are to rub some paint away. So for me it's just easier to leave it primed and then paint it at last. Real quick as a final step, I just want to dry brush some olive drab onto the pants. There's a very fine denim texture and I'd really like to bring that detail out. Like the head, I don't want to just dry brush over the entire surface. I want to stick to the areas I feel would have more wear on them. Alright, we are finally ready to tackle this rifle, so we'll of course start by laying down a base coat of Mission Models Gunmetal Gray. Okay, so we finished up with the base coat and sealed it. Now what I want to do is come back and start weathering this, and for that I'm going to start with a gray wash. For the gray wash, I just thinned some of the regular gray I used to highlight the upper body. Now I'm just going to apply this and let it dry rather than dab it away when it's still wet. So now that I have the wash applied and sealed, what I want to do now is come back and do some dry brushing with the original base color. Okay, so you can see I finished dry brushing the base coat over the rifle. It's a fairly subtle effect, but you can see in certain areas it just has that nice hand-worn feel, and I like that. So now what I want to do is come in and do a little bit of edge weathering with some silver, maybe some small chips and scratches, and then apply a rust wash to certain areas. So when I was referencing this rifle, I noticed there was always a lot of rust buildup around these plugs. Come to find out, these rifles were actually water cooled, so it makes sense that there would be rust around the plugs. And I really like the effect the rust added to the rifle, so I wanted to include that detail as well. For the rust washes, I started with a leather brown, mixed in with a little red leather and a touch of orange, and of course thinned down with water. For each pass I just added more of the red leather and orange so I could get that nice color variation. One of the last areas we need to address on the rifle is the shoulder stock. For that I just painted it flat black, applied some of the same gray wash that was used on the body of the rifle, and then sealed it with a flat clear coat. Now I'm just dry brushing a light brown over the wood grain and edges to imply that maybe the black stain or paint has worn away from being handled. Alright, so we are finally down to the base, and as you can see it's pretty bulky. It was big enough in fact that I had to print it in 4 pieces and then reassemble it. Now I've also included the boots, and as you can see here I did go in and sculpt some caked on mud. This guy's been running around the battlefields, probably not going to be too clean, so I wanted to make sure and add that little detail. Now I'll paint it all up as one so that it's consistent across the boots and base. Let's lay down a base coat of Vallejo Model Colors Leather Brown. Now this isn't an airbrush paint by nature, so I had to thin it down with some airbrush thinner and a little water. Okay, so we have everything on the base blocked in minus the barbed wire. And I've even gone in and done a little bit of a weathering on the cannon barrel, as well as applying a rust wash. So what I want to do now is take this kind of grayish brown paint I mixed up here, Now it's not quite a wash, it's more the consistency of an airbrush paint, maybe a little thinner. And what I want to do is paint the fence posts this color, and then go back in with the original base brown and paint around the skulls, fence posts, and cannon so that there's a nice transition into the terrain. So now that the base has been sealed with a clear coat, I want to go in and apply a wash. For that I'm going to use a rust texture mat. With the wash complete and the base sealed, it's time for dry brushing, and for that I'll be using Model Color Tan Earth. Okay, so I finished up dry brushing the dirt and fence posts, and I even went in and applied a rust wash to the barbed wire. So the last thing I need to do to this is dry brush the brass color onto the empty shells, seal it with a clear coat, and then we can finally start assembling this guy. Okay, so real quick before we assemble this guy, I just wanted to show all of the pieces that went into making him. So I printed the model on my Anycubic Mono X, which has a pretty good sized build volume. Even then though, I had to split the model into more manageable pieces. For instance, the upper body and the lower body were printed in 2 pieces, as well as the rifle. Now I printed him at quarter scale, which puts him at about 20 inches tall with the base. And I gotta say, this is my new favorite scale. So if I can, I'll be printing all future models at this size. So I'm going to mix up some 2-part epoxy, get this guy glued up, and I'll be right back with one last reveal. And there he is, and man, I cannot express how happy I am with how this guy turned out. I've been working on him since January, sculpting, prepping, printing, prepping some more, and finally paint. And there was quite a bit to paint. Enough I probably should have made multiple videos. Now if you like the video, please hit like and subscribe, and let me know how I did in the comments. I got some cool models on the horizon, and I'm excited to share them with you. Until then, take care everyone.